All right, so let's talk about singletons. And so it's just the two of you. Awesome. Um, so have y'all heard of singletons before? Right. So what are they? Okay. No, we didn't. I think I mentioned it at one point, and I had some students who used them in their final projects because they needed them. But other than that, no, we didn't. We didn't do. If you were to guess, I do. What would you guess? Ah. Well, I mean, what would the name suggest, right? I mean, there's a root word there. Yes. Not really. Well, if you think of game development and software development, and especially more complex ones, right? And um, when you think of there's certain classes that you have in a game that you want to persist throughout the whole game, but you never need more than one of them, right? Specifically, like a game manager, right? I mean, the game manager kind of needs to sit there the whole time, right? And if you change scenes, you kind of need the game manager to be aware of the fact that it just changed scenes, right? So it kind of needs to be persistent between scenes, but you never need more than one of them, right? Um, so that's what a singleton is. Singleton is a class that never has more than one instance of it. Um, it is. It allows for data persistence, yes, because it is a class that persists. Like you create one of these instances, right? And it doesn't die when it's not destroyed when you load another scene, right? But because of that, like say if you had two scenes that you created in Unity, and you physically put a game manager in each one of them, if you don't program it correctly, right? If you go from scene one to scene two, and the game manager from scene one doesn't die and goes in scene two has a game manager as well, then you have two of them, and you never want that, right? If you've ever had to work for two different managers telling you two different things at the same time, then you know why, right? And if you haven't had that joy, well, I hope that you never do. All right. But a singleton is a class that never has more than one instance of it. And it typically ensures that there's at least one of them, actually. If you look singleton up, you'll see that there's many different ways of implementing them or of writing one, right? And from very simple that don't really live up to what a singleton is supposed to do to very complex that I haven't even used the most complex forms of them, but and we're probably not going to get to that today, but I just want to kind of show it to you because especially yours because you have more of a complex game and you may actually need one or more of these, right? Basically any of your manager classes, like if you have a big game, you always have a game manager in even the simplest of games. And depending on how simple it is, you may want it to be a singleton. Complex games, you might have a game manager, like an audio manager, special effects. You might have several different things, several different managers, and you would probably want them all to persist and be singletons. So that's why I'm bringing this up because it is software engineering and it is an important subject. All right, so there's a link there's a link in the notes that I'm going to be referring to. It's right here. Where is it? Not that one. That one, of course. All right, so it's the unitygeek.com one. I think it does a pretty good job of kind of showing you the basics, the simplest implementation, and then kind of building on that. And that's what we're going to do. If you want to follow along, I'm going to create a project called Singleton, and we'll go from there. So if you want to follow along, do that now. And let's see, we'll do 2D. I am, yes. And let's see. All right, sounds good. Singleton. Oh, I told my other classes. Hopefully, the video upload turnaround time is going to improve. My daughter moved out last Wednesday, and she moved to an apartment that's got really super fast internet, and it's closer than Pitt by about 5 minutes. And I can go there anytime I need to. So I'll be going to her apartment and uploading videos, which means it shouldn't be just on Wednesdays. And so when I need to go there, I should be able to get it done. So hopefully that'll improve workflow somewhat. All right. All right. And create. And now we wait. But the basic idea of the singleton, right, as if you read this, I'll increase the font size. A singleton is a design pattern, and I haven't really talked about design patterns, but it's an important concept in software engineering as well. Design patterns are just many of the problems that are presented in software development and game development specifically, but game development is just a form of software development. So many of the problems that have been presented in software development, they've been solved already, right? And they've been solved many times such that software developers have kind of codified certain methods, ways of doing things, and they've become these patterns of doing things, right? And so studying these design patterns will help you especially if you have a very complex project. If you start with a already defined pattern, then you can work with that, and hopefully your product will be better designed and less flawed if you do that, if that makes any sense. All right. So the singleton is just a design pattern. It's one of those things. So classes implementing singleton pattern will ensure that only one instance of the object ever exists at any one time. It is recommended using singletons for things that do not need to be copied multiple times during a game. So this is great for controller classes like game manager or audio controller, right? Which is the two things I just mentioned a second ago, right? And the audio controller is important, right? Because a lot of you usually want your background music switching between your menu to your scene. You typically want that to be seamless and not, cut off. So if you have a singleton that persists between them, then you can ensure that. So that's another reason for doing that. All right. So the simplest implementation you see on the screen here. Am I lagging at all? What's my clock say? Well, it's not more than a minute then. That's good. All right. So the simplest implementation of the singleton is right here, right? So let's go. My Unity project has launched. That's good. Close that. And so we're going to call this Singleton controller, right? So let's go into let's create a scripts folder. And I'm just going to, can I copy? Yes, I can. Create C# script, Singleton controller, and I'll open up C# project. All right. Then we will well, it's similar, right? I mean, you can have a game manager without it being a singleton, right? And certainly, if you have a game manager, most of your objects, especially in the important objects, will have a reference to the game manager, even if it's not a singleton, right? If you have a game manager and you have a player character running around, the player character is going to need to know that the game manager exists, probably, right? So that they're similar, right? I mean, with a singleton, certainly there's going to be a reference to those. There's going to be a reference to the game manager either way. Does that make sense? Because it's an important thing, right? So, but with the singleton, it ensures there's only one of them at any one time, right? If you did without the singleton, you could have a game manager in each scene, right? And there's not necessarily a connection between them, right? The one scene ends and the next scene begins, and while it's the same class, one object is actually deleted and then it's recreated in the next scene, right? So if there was any data in the first game manager, it actually gets deleted before the next one pops up, right? So if you want any data to persist, you have to. I mean, there's different ways of making data persist, as we've learned before. But if it's a singleton and it doesn't get deleted, then that would be one way of it persisting, right? Which makes sense, is what you kind of want, right? You want a game manager to be there the whole game and keep track of things, and that's the whole point of this. It can cause weird. I mean, singletons are one of those things, and programmers like to argue about things, right? So singletons are one of those things that they'll get in debates about whether they're good or not. Some people loving them, some people hating them, and some people being kind of agnostic, which is kind of where I'm at, right? I mean, I don't come down strongly on either side of it, really. They're a useful tool that if you think you can use them, you can use them. If you don't want to use them, there's probably ways of getting around not using them. But I'm teaching them because it is a very common design pattern. Anyway, so let's get started with this, right? So let's see. All right, inside of so we got the public class, Singleton controller, mono behavior there, right? And then we're going to say public static Singleton controller instance. Now, the instance isn't there's nothing special about it. It's just a variable, right? Variable name. But the thing about it is it's the type Singleton controller, which we're inside of that, right? So static variables exist without having an instance of the class at all, right? So that variable exists as soon as the game starts. That variable is there, right? And it may or may not be defined yet, but that the variable is there, right? And that because it's static, that variable exists. It's like a global variable. It exists no matter what's happening in the game, right? So that's important. All right, so then we got let's get an await function. All right, so private void awake, right? All right, so here's the basic framework of the singleton, right? So if instance does not equal null, destroy game object. Else he is missing something. All right. Or that's a typo, right? Notice the instance here is capitalized and it's not capitalized anywhere else. So that has to be a typo, I'm assuming, right? Instance equals this, right? All right, so what is that saying here, right? Reading it line by line, right? So we created a singleton controller variable called instance, right? And then the program launches, so the awake function gets called, right? And it immediately checks to see if the instance, this variable, right, does not equal null, right? So if it doesn't equal null, it means that there's already a singleton controller in existence. That makes sense. So it means that this variable here has already been initialized and it's not null. Okay, so that means we've come into a scene where there's already been a game manager, right? And so this game manager, or I mean this singleton controller, we'll call it. It could be a game manager. It destroys itself, right? So if you think about a business, right, and this is kind of a morbid way of looking at it, but it's Pizza Hut, right? Pizza Hut, I'm a manager, right? I get to work at 9:30, we like 30 minutes late, and there's already a manager on duty, right? I don't need to be there. I shoot myself in the head, right? Because there's no need for me to be there, right? That's what's going on here, right? So this singleton controller shows up to the game late. There's already one there. It destroys itself. That makes sense. Else, right? So if it is null, right? So if this is false, it means there's not one in existence. So this one that's being created right now is going to be it, right? So it would say instance is this, which means the very instance that we're in right now, right? So this is the most basic form of this singleton, right? So let's go in here and let's see. Let's create an empty game object. We'll call it singleton, or maybe my singleton, just to be clever or something. All right, and we'll put that on that there, right? And let's just to show that we're in a scene, we're going to create a UI text, and just to say we're in scene 1, right? And this is just for the purpose of testing this thing. Damn it! What did happen? All right. Alrighty. Yep. Have a good day, and hopefully I'll get this uploaded by tomorrow sometime. We'll see. All right. Yep. Have a good one. All right. Let's see. So it's just small class today. Huh? All right. Wow. All right. well, we'll go through this one example, and I might do more of it later. But I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't know. Seems kind of silly. But let's see. So we'll just change this to say scene 1, right? And let's see. I'm actually going to change this scene. I don't know if it's going to crash on me. Let's see if it does. Oh, it didn't. That's good. All right. I'm going to put a button in here that's going to allow us to change scenes, so we can test to see that the singleton is actually there, right? So let's do a button, and let's put there. Button. Right. Change scene. All right. And let's see. Let's. I think I can. Let's. I'm going to duplicate this scene now, and that will allow me to. I think I rarely ever use the built-in functions of buttons, but I'm going to try it this time. Let's see. There's a way of doing it. Well, I'm going to screw it. I'm going to write the function. So public void change scene. And I'll need using Unity engine scene management. That and scene manager. Let's see, load scene. I'll just do that. Do it bare bones simple for now, so I can get this done. Right. So, and the button I can say now, scene Singleton controller. I changed scene. There it is. Right. Okay, so let's just see if it changes scenes first, and then we'll worry about this. Well, the singleton actually should be there if it works correctly. All right, so running. Singleton is there, right? Well, I didn't change the text. I can't even tell if it's changed. Let's see. Oh, and no, I didn't add it to the build settings because I'm an idiot. All right, so add event scenes, scene 2. There we go. All right. I will go into scene 2 and change that so I can tell that I'm in scene 2 real quick. What? All right, that's odd. When I duplicated a scene, I assumed it would duplicate the scene and have everything in there, but why? What's the point of duplicate? Oh, nah, damn it. All right, I bet I didn't save the scene before I duplicated it. All right, so it's not Monday, is it? All right, so I'm going to go back. It does. All right, so I'm not going to save scene 2 because yeah. All right, so now I am going to save scene 1. All right, so save. I'm going to probably check the build settings again, yeah, because it got deleted. Right, so delete that. All right, Okay, there, that worked. All right, so note to self, save the scene before you duplicate it. All right, so there we go. All right, now I'll switch back to scene 1. Now, actually, I'm going to go into scene 2 just to test this out. And I'm going to delete this singleton. I'll see what happens. All right. Save that. Switch back to scene 1. If it works like it's supposed to, my singleton should show up in the other one. Right? So we'll see. It may not because it's not particularly. It's actually, let's say it's probably not going to. So I'm for now, I'm going to actually copy that. And because the way it's written, it's not actually doing everything it's supposed to. All right, so what we're going to see is that they're not 2 of them. So it does work that well. It does work that way, I think. All right, so anyway, let's go. All right, so change scenes, scene 2. All right, so there's my singleton there, and there's only one of them, so that's good. If you click this again, it's going to give you an error because there's not another scene, but it should give you an error. That's weird. Oh, I wonder. No, I don't know. I don't know why that didn't work. There's no action for that button. Thought I'd define that before I duplicated the scene. Maybe I did not. All right, so anyway, you see that there's only one singleton there, right? And let's look. So that's the basics of the simplest implementation of a singleton. Above code is simplest implementation, but the singleton is not persistent across the Unity scenes. Okay, so this one actually doesn't. This isn't persisting, right? So we're actually seeing 2 different my singletons in this, right? Because we're not destroying it on load, right? So we got to do that. All the executable code must be attached to the game object in the hierarchy. It is not recommended to call singleton controller instance in any awake method because since we don't know the order that awake will be executed through all scripts, we can end up with a null reference exception. This code works only for the singleton controller class, but if you want another singleton controller, we have to copy and paste the same code to audio controller class and do some minor changes to works, but this leads to boilerplate code, right? First one is easy to fix. Just add the don't destroy on load game object. All right, so this, all we have to do is add that one line in there, and that'll fix that. So here, right? Don't destroy on load game object. So, play. At this point, you'll note that the hierarchy has a don't destroy on load section in it, and that includes all the objects that are marked that way, right? So there's special objects, and they're important to know that because these are ones that will persist between scenes. So now we can click change scene, right? And you'll note that we still only have one my singleton, which is what we want. That's good. All right, so that's the most basic singleton, right? And solution for the second and third issue. For this issue, we have to create the singleton at the time it is required. Means we have to lazily instantiate the Singleton controller in Unity, right? So what this means is that this Singleton controller gets instantiated when you ask for one of them, right? It goes to see if there is one. If there's not, it creates one, right? So that's the difference. Note that this get thing here, right? And this is why they had the capital I in the other one. It's because he was foreshadowing this, but it was still a mistake on his part. And let me see. Since it's only you here, I'm going to save that for next time because it's more complex than I want to describe to one person and not have them understand it anyway. All right, so that's the beginning of singletons anyway. You have any questions about that? All right. Don't know why you were why you and Emma were the only ones here, but whatever. Yeah, because you're the only ones doing work. That's probably the answer. But anyway, I'm frustrated. All right.